This is Middle East Brief with Avi Kaner, your daily intelligence update on what actually matters.
Most countries in the world have a constitution. Not just democracies. Monarchies have constitutions. Republics have constitutions. Parliamentary systems have constitutions. Presidential systems have constitutions. Out of roughly 195 countries in the world, only a single handful lack a constitution, and Israel is one of them. That fact surprises many people. Israel is a global technology powerhouse, a military superpower by regional standards, one of the world's most vibrant democracies. Yet, nearly 80 years after independence, it still lacks the one document that clearly defines the powers of government, the rights of citizens, and the rules of the political system. When Israel declared independence in 1948, the founders intended to adopt a constitution. In fact, the Declaration of Independence explicitly envisioned one. But disagreements quickly emerged. Religious parties feared a constitution might override Jewish law. Secular parties feared religious influence. Others worried that defining identity and religion-state relations would prove impossible. So the constitution was postponed, and postponed again and again. And there was one man more responsible for that outcome than anyone else: David Ben-Gurion. Israel's founding father initially supported the idea of a constitution, but as independence approached, he became increasingly skeptical. Ben-Gurion worried that a rigid constitutional framework would limit the flexibility needed to build a new state surrounded by enemies. He feared endless legal disputes. He feared paralysis. And he believed Israel's citizens, through their elected representatives, should retain the ability to shape the country as circumstances evolved. Israel was absorbing Holocaust survivors. It was absorbing Jews expelled from Arab Middle East lands, refugees from Europe, North Africa, and across the Middle East. It was fighting wars while simultaneously building institutions from scratch. Ben-Gurion believed Israel was simply unready to lock itself into a constitutional framework. So he chose flexibility over permanence. Instead, Israel developed a series of basic laws over decades. These basic laws functioned somewhat like constitutional chapters, but they never became a complete constitution. And that ambiguity has consequences. Because when powers are not clearly defined, institutions inevitably clash. The Supreme Court, the Knesset, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the military, the bureaucracy. Everyone claims legitimacy. Everyone claims authority. And no single constitutional document definitively settles the disputes. The result is a recurring struggle over who actually governs. The consequences became visible to the entire world in 2023. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis took to the streets over judicial reform. Week after week, month after month. Reservists threatened not to serve. Families fought. Friendships were fractured. The country became consumed by internal political warfare. Then came October 7, and suddenly Israelis were reminded that the greatest threats to the country were not in Jerusalem. They were in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, in Tehran. The constitutional crisis did not cause October 7, but it revealed something important. A nation consumed by internal division risks losing focus on external dangers. And there is an irony here. Ben-Gurion feared that a constitution could create endless institutional conflict. Today, many Israelis would argue that the absence of a constitution has produced exactly that outcome. The Jewish people know better than most that unity is a strategic asset. That is one reason a constitution deserves renewed attention. Not because it would solve every disagreement, it would not, but because it could create agreed rules of the game, rules that survive elections, rules that survive political personalities, rules that survive temporary majorities. And there is another reason. Israel was founded as a refuge of the Jewish people, the one place on earth where Jews would always possess the right of self-determination. Today, Israel remains overwhelmingly Jewish, but demographic realities change over time, including the possible outcome of a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Political coalitions change, future immigration patterns change, birth rates change. No one knows what Israel will look like 50 or 100 years from now. A constitution could permanently anchor Israel's core purpose. It could establish once and for all that Israel is a nation-state of the Jewish people while simultaneously protecting the civil and political rights of every citizen. It could define what many Israelis already believe, that Israel is both Jewish and democratic, not one or the other, both. A constitution could protect the law of return, protect Hebrew as a national language, protect Jewish self-determination, protect democratic institutions, protect minority rights, and ensure that these principles cannot be easily altered by shifting political winds. Many countries have constitutional provisions protecting their national character. Israel could do the same, and it could do so while remaining a vibrant democracy for all of its citizens. Of course, writing a constitution would not be easy. Israel's religious and secular communities disagree on fundamental questions of marriage, military and civil service, conversion, Shabbat, the role of Jewish law, the powers of the courts, the balance between majority rule and minority rights. These debates have existed since before independence, but that is precisely why a constitution matters, because it forces a society to define its shared foundations. So what would it take? Legally, the Knesset could transform the existing basic laws into a formal constitution and adopt additional provisions. Politically, it would likely require a broad national consensus and probably a supermajority of the Knesset. Many Israelis would also argue for a national referendum. In other words, it would require something Israel has often struggled to achieve: agreement. But perhaps the events of recent years have created an opportunity. Israel has demonstrated extraordinary military strength, extraordinary technological innovation, extraordinary resilience. The next challenge may be institutional, creating a constitutional framework capable of uniting a diverse society while preserving the Jewish state for generations to come. Because constitutions are not merely legal documents, they are statements of national purpose. And after nearly 80 years of independence, it is now time for Israel to write its own constitution.
This is Middle East Brief with Avi Kaner. If you want clarity, not noise, follow and share. Continue the conversation on X at Avi Kaner. Back tomorrow